Awakening in the silence. You wake up at 3 in the morning, not because something woke you, not because you couldn't sleep. You wake up because a quiet mechanism of self-destruction switches on inside you. In the complete silence of your bedroom, this inner voice sounds deafeningly loud. You won't succeed. They see everything. You can't handle this. These aren't just thoughts. This is a voice that knows you better than you know yourself. It knows all your weak spots, all your fears, all your failures, and it uses them against you. Every night, every morning, at every important moment of your life, you lie in bed and listen to this whisper. It sounds so convincing, so reasonable. It presents logical arguments, reminds you of past failures, predicts future disappointments, and you believe it because it speaks with the voice of common sense, the voice of caution, the voice of realism. But this isn't realism. This is your mind, and it's waging a war against you, a war you don't even acknowledge, a war that takes place in the silence of your consciousness, while you sleep, while you work, while you interact with loved ones. Every morning you wake up with new hope, with new plans, with new resolutions. Today will be different, you promise yourself. Today I will start a new life. You make to-do lists, set goals, visualize success. But by evening, you find yourself back where you were yesterday, on the same couch, with the same doubts, with the same disappointment. And you ask yourself, what's wrong with me? Why can others do it, but I can't? You berate yourself for lack of willpower, for laziness, for weakness. You look for external reasons, in circumstances, in other people, in the unfairness of the world. But the truth is much more frightening. The truth is that you've encountered the perfect opponent. This opponent knows every thought you have before you think it, every decision you make before you make it, every weak spot you have, every secret hope, and it uses all of this against you. It doesn't attack openly. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't forbid. It cautions. It doesn't say no. It says what if. It masterfully creates doubt, undermines confidence, destroys resolve. When you want to start something new, it reminds you of past failures. When you meet an interesting person, it shows you all the possible reasons why it won't work out. When you dream of something greater, it convincingly argues why you should be content with less. The most terrible part, this opponent speaks with your voice, thinks your thoughts, uses your own logic. You can't run from it. You can't hide. You can't even tell where you end and it begins. Because this opponent is your own mind, not some mystical enemy, not an external force. You yourself, or rather, a part of you that evolved to protect you but is now destroying you from within. You are not weak. You are not lazy. You are not a failure. You simply don't understand what you're dealing with. You are like a chess player competing against yourself, unaware that the other half of your consciousness knows all your moves before you make them. But today, everything changes. Today you will learn the truth. The truth about why your mind became your enemy, why it sabotages your efforts, why it destroys your dreams, and most importantly, how to turn this enemy back into an ally. This work can end. This silence can be filled with peace. This night can give way to dawn. But first, you must face the truth. You must acknowledge that all this time, you haven't been fighting the world, not circumstances, not other people. You've been fighting yourself. And now it's time to lay down your weapons. It's time to understand that the real enemy was just an illusion, a shadow cast by your own light. And when you understand this, you will understand everything. The ancient protector turned jailer. Imagine for a moment that your brain is an ancient computer, not just old, but archaic, powerful beyond comprehension, capable of processing millions of bits of information per second, incredibly efficient in its basic design, but running on an operating system that hasn't received significant updates for tens of thousands of years. Its code was written in an era where the main currency was physical survival, and the only stock exchange was the African savanna. Its primary task is not your happiness, not your success in the modern sense, not your self-realization or existential fulfillment. Only survival. at any cost, at any moment, even if the price is your psychological well-being, even if the price is your dreams, even if the price is the very essence of what you call your personality. In a world where danger was not an abstract concept, but a physical reality lurking around every corner, this mechanism was perfect. In a world where one wrong step could mean an encounter with a saber-toothed tiger, where one social mistake led to exile from the tribe, which was equivalent to certain death, this ancient protector was your greatest asset. It was what stood between you and oblivion. It learned to recognize the slightest signs of threat, a change in a tribesman's facial expression, tone of voice, body language, a rustle in the grass, a distant sound. It exaggerated dangers because the cost of a false alarm was negligible compared to the cost of a single missed threat. Better to run from a shadow 1,000 times than to fail to run from a predator once. It conserved energy with the greed of a starving person because the next meal might be days or even weeks away. Move without necessity. Spend precious calories on abstract thoughts. Take risks out of curiosity. Impossible. A luxury for which there were no evolutionary credits. It clung to the familiar because the familiar meant tested. The tested meant safe. The new was a treacherous trap disguised as an opportunity. Social approval was a matter of life and death, for solitude in the wild was a death sentence. But today this ancient protector, this faithful guardian, has become your personal jailer. The walls of the savannah have collapsed, replaced by the glass and concrete of megacities. The threat of starvation has dissolved in a world of 24/7 food delivery. Social rejection no longer leads to physical death. And it didn't get the memo. It continues to protect you from threats that no longer exist. With the same zeal, with the same ferocity, it whispers panic messages to you when you think about changing careers, interpreting uncertainty as a mortal danger. It injects cortisol into your bloodstream when you prepare to talk to a stranger, seeing them not as a potential friend or partner, but as a threat to your social status and, therefore, survival. It sabotages your attempts to start a new venture because the new is the unknown, and the unknown in its archaic dictionary equals danger. It makes you procrastinate, conserving energy for a hypothetical threat that never comes. It destroys your relationships because intimacy is vulnerability, and vulnerability in the savannah could have cost you your life. At the cost of your happiness. For happiness often requires risk, vulnerability, openness to new experiences, all things that its ancient firmware marks with red flags of mortal danger. At the cost of your growth. Because growth is leaving your comfort zone, facing uncertainty, voluntarily immersing yourself in stress. All things its primary task is to protect you from. At the cost of your freedom. The freedom to be who you want to be. The freedom to choose. The freedom to change. It has built you a perfect, from its point of view, prison. A prison where the walls are your own fears. The bars are your limiting beliefs. The jailer is your own, once faithful, now tyrannical mind. It is not evil. It does not wish you harm. On the contrary, it sincerely believes it is saving you. From success, which it sees as risk. From love, which it decodes as a threat. From dreams, which it reads as delirium. And the greatest irony is that to gain true freedom, you must not fight this jailer, but persuade it. Explain to it that the world has changed, that the rules are different, that the threats it so fiercely protects you from have long since disappeared, and that the most terrible dangers today are not external predators, but the internal prison it has so diligently built for you. The survival paradox in a world of abundance. Your brain is programmed for scarcity. Deep in its neural pathways, an inexorable law is etched. Resources are limited, danger is everywhere, and the next meal might never come. It was created for a world where food had to be obtained at risk to life, where shelter required daily struggle, where safety was a temporary illusion between periods of mortal threat. Your brain is obsessed with danger, not because it's paranoid, but because over millions of years of evolution, those who underestimated danger didn't leave offspring. Its core operating system is a sophisticated early warning system tuned to detect the slightest signs of threat: shadows in the grass, unfamiliar smells, broken branches, facial expressions that might precede an attack. Your brain is obsessed with conserving energy. Every extra calorie spent unnecessarily could have meant the difference between life and death in a world where food was unpredictable and hard to obtain. Moving without purpose? Spending mental energy on abstractions? Taking risks out of curiosity? No. Evolution ruthlessly filtered out such spendthrifts. But you live in a world of abundance. A world where food is available 24/7, where shelter over one's head is the norm, where physical safety is guaranteed on a scale unimaginable to your ancestors. You live in a world of opportunities, where social status can be changed, careers can be built, and personal growth has become an industry. You are drowning in information. News, social media, knowledge, everything is instantly available. Your brain evolved to process information about a few dozen tribe members and a local territory. Now it's trying to process data about millions of people and the entire planet. And this gap, this chasm between what your brain was designed for and the world it finds itself in, creates an internal conflict that tears you apart. This isn't just cognitive dissonance. This is an existential split at the very foundation of your being. You want to build a career, an ambitious, meaningful, fulfilling one. But your brain whispers, "Save your energy. What if there's no food tomorrow?" It doesn't understand the concept of a career. It only understands expending energy now equals potential hunger later. And it activates the same anxiety mechanisms that once saved your ancestors from exhaustion. You want to meet new people, to form deep connections, find partners, build community. But the ancient instinct screams, strangers are dangerous. In your brain's world, every stranger is a potential disease carrier, a competitor for resources, a threat to your status in the tribe. Your social anxiety isn't a character flaw. It's an ancient biological security system misfiring at the wrong time. You want to take risks, start a business, change your life, follow your dreams. But the self-preservation mechanism blocks you at a physiological level. Cortisol rises. Your heart rate increases. Muscles tense. This isn't your cowardice. This is a successful evolutionary strategy now working against you. Remember the last time you wanted to approach a stranger? At a party, in a coffee shop, at the gym. Did you feel that physical barrier? That tension in your body? The accelerated heartbeat? Dry mouth? That's not your fear. That's an ancient program that once saved your ancestors' lives. Your brain doesn't see a potential friend or partner. It sees a possible disease carrier, immune system on high alert, a competitor for resources, adrenaline preparing for conflict, a threat to social status, cortisol preparing for potential humiliation. This system worked perfectly when your ancestors lived in groups of 50 to 100 people and rarely encountered strangers. Now, in a metropolis, you see hundreds of threats daily. Your stress system is constantly overloaded. You try to diet in a world of abundance. Your brain panics, famine, and intensifies cravings for high-calorie food. You try to work productively amid endless distractions. Your brain constantly shifts attention, scanning the environment for threats. You try to make long-term plans, while your brain lives in an eternal now, because in the world of its creation, the future was unpredictable and dangerous. This paradox permeates every area of your life. In relationships, you seek both the safety of predictability and the thrill of novelty. In your career, you want both stability and growth simultaneously. In daily life, you crave both comfort and adventure. You are torn between instincts created for a world of scarcity and the reality of a world of abundance. And you blame yourself when you can't just get your act together. But the problem isn't you. The problem is that you're trying to fly a jet plane using bicycle instructions. Every time you experience unexplained anxiety, procrastination, self-sabotage, remember, it's not you failing. It's your ancient brain successfully performing the functions it was designed for. Functions that no longer serve you in the modern world. Understanding this is the first step toward reconciliation with yourself, toward acknowledging that the struggle you're fighting isn't a struggle with your flaws, but a struggle with the legacy of millions of years of evolution. And only by recognizing this fundamental duality can you begin to consciously reprogram your responses to serve you in a world so radically different from that of your ancestors. The neurochemical addiction to suffering. Do you think you consciously choose to worry? That it's your rational decision to replay negative scenarios in your head, return to thoughts of past failures, anticipate future catastrophes? Do you believe this is just a bad habit you can overcome through willpower, like stopping nail biting or eating sweets? This is not a choice. This is not a habit. This is a chemical addiction, deep, physiological, embedded in the very structure of your brain. Your brain is the most complex chemical laboratory. Every thought you have, every experience, every emotional state is the result of a delicate neurochemical balance. When you've lived for years, decades, in a state of chronic stress, anxiety, and self-criticism, your brain has adapted. It has reconfigured its biochemistry to function in this toxic cocktail. Cortisol, the stress hormone that should be released briefly in dangerous situations, becomes a constant background presence. Adrenaline and norepinephrine, mediators of alertness and the fight or flight response, now circulate in your blood even while you sleep. The dopamine system, responsible for reward and motivation, restructures itself. Now dopamine release occurs not from achievements or joy, but from another round of self-criticism, from a discovered danger, from confirmation of your worst expectations. The state of chronic stress becomes its new homeostasis, its normal baseline state. Imagine sitting your whole life in a room with bright red lighting. Your eyes have adapted. You no longer notice the red light. To you, it's normal. Now imagine stepping out into sunlight. At first, you're blinded. The white light seems unnatural, painful, wrong. You instinctively want to return to the familiar red room. Your brain does the same thing. When a period of peace arrives in your life, when everything is genuinely good, when there are no obvious reasons for anxiety, your brain panics. Something's wrong, your neurons scream. Where's the danger? Why isn't there the usual cortisol level? Why isn't adrenaline pounding in my temples? This isn't normal. And so your brain, this faithful servant that wants to return you to normal conditions, begins to create threats, to find problems where none exist, to exaggerate minor difficulties to the scale of catastrophes, to invent scenarios that will make your heart beat faster and your palms sweat. You catch yourself looking for hidden motives and compliments, expecting failure after success, searching for hidden meanings in neutral words. This isn't your paranoia. This is your brain trying to restore its familiar chemical balance, to return you to the state it has learned to consider normal. Imagine an alcoholic trying to quit drinking. Their body has spent years adapting to the constant presence of ethanol. It has restructured its metabolism, changed how neurotransmitters work. When the alcohol disappears, withdrawal begins. Anxiety, depression, physical pain. The brain demands the return of the substance it's accustomed to. Now imagine you're trying to quit the habit of worrying, of self-criticism, of guilt, of catastrophizing. You're denying your brain its familiar drug, stress. And the same withdrawal begins. The same anxiety, the same depression, the same physical pain. Only it's invisible, not recognized by society, not understood even by yourself. You tell yourself, just relax, stop thinking about bad things, pull yourself together. But this is like telling an alcoholic in withdrawal, just don't drink, or a heroin addict, just don't shoot up. You can't just stop, because your body, your brain, your biochemistry are demanding their dose. Their dose of stress, their dose of anxiety, their dose of self-flagellation. This addiction creates a vicious cycle. 1. You experience stress, the brain releases cortisol and adrenaline. 2. You become accustomed to this state, the brain restructures itself to function with high levels of stress hormones. 3. When the stress passes, the brain interprets this as an abnormal state. 4. The brain creates new stress to restore the normal chemical balance. 5. You experience stress again, and the cycle closes. You become an addict of your own suffering. Your neural pathways are well-trodden paths to sources of stress. You walk them automatically, without even realizing it. Every time you catch yourself replaying a humiliating episode from 10 years ago, endlessly analyzing what you said wrong, imagining being fired, abandoned, betrayed, looking for hidden meanings in a friend's or partner's neutral words, expecting trouble after success. Know this, it's not you. It's your chemical addiction demanding its dose. It's your brain trying to return you to the comfortable state of chronic stress. But there's good news too. Any addiction can be overcome. Any neural pathways can be rewired. Any biochemistry can be changed. This requires not just willpower. It requires strategy. It requires understanding the mechanisms. It requires time. You must realize your craving for worry, your need for self-criticism, your attraction to catastrophic scenarios. These are not part of your personality. These are symptoms of addiction, like the trembling hands of an alcoholic, like the withdrawal of a drug addict. And the first step toward healing is to acknowledge this addiction, to stop blaming yourself, to stop considering yourself weak, to understand that you're facing not a moral failing, but a physiological condition. You didn't choose this addiction, but you can choose healing. You can begin to restructure your biochemistry, create new neural pathways, teach your brain a new homeostasis, a homeostasis of peace, confidence, inner peace. It will be difficult. There will be withdrawal. There will be moments when you instinctively look for reasons to worry, when calm will seem unnatural, suspicious, wrong. But with each day, with each conscious choice in favor of peace, with each refusal to feed your addiction, you will become freer. Your brain will restructure itself. The chemical balance will change. And one day you'll discover that the silence in your head has become not frightening, but peaceful. That calm has become your new normal state. That you are no longer an addict of suffering, but a person who has learned to live in peace with yourself. Trauma as identity. I'm like this because my parents didn't love me. My relationships don't work out because I was betrayed. I can't trust because I was deceived. These stories, they become your passport to the world, your justification, your explanation for why you aren't living a full life. They are the well-rehearsed monologues you present to yourself and others, the familiar narratives that echo through your mind in quiet moments and during times of challenge. Letting them go is more terrifying than continuing to suffer. Because without these stories, who are you? If you're not the victim of childhood neglect, then who is staring back at you in the mirror? If you're not the person who always gets betrayed, what identity remains when you strip away that painful certainty? Your mind clings to trauma because it provides something essential: identity, clear boundaries, an understanding of your place in the world, a ready-made explanation for your struggles and failures. Without them, there is emptiness, the unknown, a blank canvas where anything could be written, including possibilities you've spent years protecting yourself against. And this unknown is more frightening to the ancient brain than the most intense, familiar pain. Better the devil you know than the angel you don't. You meet someone who treats you with respect, with care, with genuine love. They remember the small details you share. They show up when they say they will. They see your worth even when you can't see it yourself. But you feel bored, uninterested, restless. Something's wrong, you think. There must be something wrong with them. Or with me. This doesn't feel right. This something wrong you're feeling, it's the absence of familiar suffering, the lack of pain that has become woven into the very fabric of your personality. It's the chemical withdrawal from drama, from uncertainty, from the emotional roller coaster your nervous system has come to expect as normal. Where there should be peace, you feel emptiness. Where there should be security, you feel suspicion. Your trauma has become your comfort zone, a painful one, but familiar in its contours and boundaries. This identification with pain creates a devastating paradox. You become allergic to healthy relationships precisely because they lack the toxic elements that feel like passion or intensity to your traumatized nervous system. The stable partner seems boring compared to the unpredictable one who keeps you in a state of anxious attachment. The respectful colleague seems uninspiring compared to the critical one who triggers your childhood wounds. The peaceful environment feels dead compared to the chaotic one that matches your internal state. Your brain, in its twisted wisdom, has learned to find comfort in discomfort. It has built an entire identity around your wounds, and to release that identity would feel like psychological death. Who would you be without your story of being wronged? Without your narrative of being broken? Without the familiar ache that has been your constant companion? This is why people so often sabotage good things when they finally appear. This is why you might find yourself picking fights in a peaceful relationship. This is why you might feel inexplicably drawn to people who are guaranteed to hurt you in familiar ways. You're not choosing pain. You're choosing familiarity. You're choosing the identity you've constructed around your suffering. The tragedy is that this identity, built from trauma, prevents you from discovering who you might become without it. It blocks you from experiencing the very healing you consciously seek. You've become so identified with your wounds that you can no longer distinguish between the trauma and your true self. But here's the secret your trauma doesn't want you to know. These stories are not you. They are things that happened to you. They are experiences you survived. But they are not your essence. Your true self exists beneath these layers of protective storytelling. Your authentic being remains intact beneath the identities you've constructed to make sense of your pain. Healing begins when you start to question, what if I'm not the person who was betrayed, but rather a person who experienced betrayal? What if I'm not the victim of neglect, but a human being who knew loneliness? The shift is subtle but profound, from being defined by what happened to you, to simply having experienced what happened to you. This doesn't mean denying your pain or minimizing your experiences. It means recognizing that you are larger than your trauma, that your identity can include your wounds without being dominated by them, that you can honor what you've been through without letting it dictate who you become. The journey from trauma as identity to trauma as experience is perhaps the most courageous journey you'll ever take. It requires building tolerance for the unknown. It demands learning to find comfort in peace rather than in pain. It asks you to discover who you are beneath the stories you've told yourself and been told about yourself. And when you begin this journey, you might just discover that the person who emerges, the person who existed before the trauma became your identity, is far more interesting, far more resilient, and far more worthy of love than the stories ever allowed you to believe. The illusion of control. The more you try to control, the more anxiety you feel. Because life cannot be controlled. People cannot be controlled. Events cannot be controlled. Even your own thoughts and emotions cannot be controlled. This is the fundamental truth of existence that your mind desperately tries to deny, fighting against the very nature of reality itself. But the mind refuses to accept this truth. It continues its futile attempt to bend reality to match your expectations, to make the unpredictable predictable, to tame the wild, chaotic nature of existence into something manageable, something safe, something that fits within the narrow confines of your understanding. You make plans. You calculate scenarios. You set goals with military precision. creating elaborate maps for journeys through territory that constantly changes beneath your feet. And when life inevitably intervenes with its own corrections, when the unexpected happens, when people surprise you, when circumstances shift, you feel like a failure. You blame yourself for not planning well enough, for not anticipating every possible variable, for not being smart enough or careful enough to prevent what couldn't possibly be prevented. The problem wasn't your strategy. It was the very idea that you could strategize your way out of life's inherent uncertainty. You try to control your partner, their emotions, their thoughts, their actions. You monitor their tone of voice, analyze their words, interpret their silences. You try to shape them into the person you want them to be, to make them love you in the way you want to be loved, to respond to situations in the manner you deem appropriate. This is impossible, and the more you try, the more resistance you encounter, the more anxiety you experience, because you're trying to control what is fundamentally uncontrollable by its very nature. This desperate need for control manifests in countless ways throughout your life. Micromanaging employees because you can't trust others to meet your standards. Obsessively checking your phone for messages from someone whose attention you crave. Creating rigid daily routines that leave no room for spontaneity. Demanding promises and guarantees about a future that hasn't happened yet. Trying to manipulate conversations to reach predetermined outcomes. Each attempt at control is like trying to hold water in your clenched fist. The tighter you squeeze, the more slips through your fingers. The energy you expend in these futile efforts is energy stolen from living, from experiencing, from being present in what actually is rather than trying to force what you think should be. The terrifying truth your mind avoids is this: you were never in control to begin with. Not yesterday, not today, not tomorrow. The sense of control you occasionally experience is nothing more than a temporary alignment between your desires and reality's unfolding. A fortunate coincidence that you mistakenly attribute to your own skill or foresight. Your need for control is ultimately a defense against vulnerability. If you can control everything, you never have to face the terrifying truth that you're fundamentally at the mercy of forces beyond your command. That people you love could leave. That health could fail. That plans could collapse. That life could change in an instant, regardless of how carefully you've prepared. But here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to control, you begin to experience a different kind of power. Not power over, but power with. The power that comes from flowing with life rather than fighting against it. The power that emerges when you stop wasting energy on the impossible task of controlling the uncontrollable and instead focus on what you can actually influence. Your responses, your attitudes, your presence. Relinquishing control doesn't mean becoming passive or abandoning responsibility. It means recognizing the difference between what you can change and what you cannot. It means bringing your creative energy to the things you can actually affect, rather than exhausting yourself in battles you cannot win. When you stop trying to control your partner, you create space for genuine connection. When you stop trying to control outcomes, you open yourself to unexpected possibilities. When you stop trying to control life itself, you begin to truly live it, with all its beautiful, terrifying, magnificent uncertainty. The greatest freedom isn't found in perfect control, but in the courage to release it, to embrace the wild, unpredictable dance of existence without needing to lead every step, to trust that even when you're not in control, you're still exactly where you need to be, learning what you need to learn, becoming who you're meant to become. The way out of the labyrinth. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are not your beliefs. You are not even your body. You are the consciousness that observes all of this. When you stop identifying with the content of your mind, the war ends. This is not just a philosophical concept. It is the fundamental key to your liberation from the self-created prison of your own psyche. For your entire life, you have been taught to believe that you are the voice in your head, that the endless stream of judgments, fears, desires, and memories constitutes your identity. You have been drowning in this river of mental noise, mistaking the turbulent waters for your very self. But you are not the river. You are the awareness in which the river flows. You are not the storm of emotions. You are the space in which the storm arises and passes. When you truly understand this, not intellectually, but experientially, everything changes. The thought arrives, you will fail. Previously, you would have begun to fight it, argue with it, try to prove it wrong, or you would have believed it, allowing it to drain your energy and dictate your actions. You would have either wrestled with the shadow or been devoured by it. Now, you simply notice, there is a thought. You acknowledge its presence without resistance, without engagement, without ownership. You allow it to come, and you allow it to go, like a cloud passing through the vast, open sky. You are not the cloud. You are the sky. The clouds of thought and emotion drift through you, but they do not define you. They change. They disperse. They are temporary weather patterns in the boundless atmosphere of your awareness. This shift from identification to observation is the most profound power you possess. It is the end of your internal civil war. The dictator in your mind loses its authority when you stop recognizing it as your ruler. The anxious thoughts, the critical voices, the limiting beliefs, they are like actors on a stage. When you stop being an actor caught in the drama and instead become the audience, the entire play loses its power over you. But understanding alone is not enough. This awareness must be coupled with courageous action. You must retrain your entire nervous system, which has been conditioned for decades to obey the fearful commands of the mind. Start small. Today, right now, do one single action that your mind labels as dangerous or meaningless. Your mind is a master of creating convincing excuses for inaction. It will tell you to wait for the perfect moment, for more confidence, for a guarantee of success. Do not wait for the fear to disappear. That day will never come. Fear is the body's ancient guardian. It will always signal caution when you step into the unknown. Act with the fear. Let it be your companion, not your jailer. Feel its icy grip in your chest, the tremor in your hands, the voice of protest in your head, and do it anyway. Approach a stranger, not to achieve a specific outcome, but to prove to yourself that you can survive the discomfort, that you can tolerate the uncertainty of their reaction, that the social judgment your mind so fears is not a mortal threat. Voice your opinion. In a meeting, in a conversation, online. Risk being wrong. Risk being criticized. The goal is not to be universally approved of. The goal is to honor your own perspective and detach your self-worth from the approval of others. Start that project you've been postponing for years. Write the first sentence. Make the first sketch. Register the domain name. The mind will scream that it's not good enough, that it's a waste of time, that you're not ready. Acknowledge the scream and take the small, imperfect action regardless. Each time you do this, you are not just completing a task. You are casting a vote for a new identity. You are sending a clear message to your entire being. I am not my fear. I am the one who acts despite it. You are carving new neural pathways, building the muscle of courageous presence. This is the way out of the labyrinth, not by fighting the walls, but by realizing you were never truly trapped to begin with. The walls were made of thought, and you are the thinker. The path forward is built not on the absence of fear, but on the conscious choice to walk with it, through it, and beyond it. The war ends when you lay down your weapons and simply observe the battlefield from the silent, untouchable peace of your own awareness. Returning home. You are returning home, not to a physical location on a map, not to a house made of wood and stone, but to the essence of who you were before the world told you who you should be. You are journeying back to the self that existed before the first fear took root in your heart, before the first wound carved its story into your flesh, before the first "you cannot" erected walls around your spirit, before the first disappointment taught you to lower your expectations. This homecoming is not a geographical destination. It is a state of consciousness, a profound inner orientation where you finally remember your true nature. It is the place within you where you are no longer a slave to the tyrannical chatter of your thoughts, no longer a hostage to the stormy waves of your emotions, no longer a prisoner of the limiting beliefs you mistook for absolute truth. Here, in this home within yourself, you discover a fundamental shift in the architecture of your being. The thoughts still arise, the worries, the plans, the criticisms, but they are like visitors passing through the spacious rooms of your awareness. You offer them tea, you acknowledge their presence, but you no longer mistake them for the owner of the house. The emotions still flow, joy, sorrow, anger, fear, but they are like weather patterns moving through the vast sky of your consciousness. You feel them fully, you honor their messages, but you are not the storm, you are the sky that holds it. The war is over, not because you achieved a decisive victory on the battlefield, not because you obliterated an external enemy, but because you arrived at the profound realization that the true enemy was never an external force. The enemy was a shadow, a long, dark shadow cast by the immense brightness of your own light. You were fighting a phantom, wrestling with your own reflection in the dark. When you stopped fighting the shadows, when you ceased giving them your energy and attention, your inner light was finally able to blaze forth at its full intensity, illuminating the truth that there was never anything to fight but the fear of your own radiance. You are free, not in some distant future when all conditions are perfect, not someday when you finally fix everything that you believe is broken. Right now, in this very moment, freedom is not a prize to be won at the end of a long struggle. It is the fundamental ground of your being, available the instant you stop denying it. Everything you need to experience this freedom is already here. The only thing standing between you and your inherent liberty is a single, persistent, hypnotic belief, the belief that you are not free. You have been convinced that you are separate, limited, flawed, and broken. You have worn these chains not because they are real, but because you have forgotten how to take them off. The journey of self-discovery culminates in this astonishingly simple yet radical act: to stop believing the story of your own imprisonment, to stop investing faith in the narrative of limitation, to withdraw your consent from the illusion that you are anything less than whole, complete, and fundamentally free. This is your home, this awareness, this presence. This is who you are beneath the layers of conditioning, beyond the scars of experience, before the accumulation of a lifetime of shoulds and should-nots. You are the silent witness, the loving awareness, the conscious space in which the entire drama of your life unfolds. You have arrived. You were always here. You were just waiting for yourself to remember.